Real love stories hold a mirror to who we are as human beings, revealing not only our brightest strengths, but also the flaws and imperfections we often try to hide. Unlike the curated images we see in movies or social media, these stories carry within them the raw truths of being human. The laughter, the tears, the doubts, and the bravery it takes to keep showing up. They remind us that love cannot exist in perfection because perfection is an illusion. It is in the imperfect spaces of love that our courage truly shines, teaching us that vulnerability is not weakness, but an act of strength. When people tell their real love stories, they speak about moments of fear, times of doubt, and even instances where everything seemed to be falling apart. Yet within these narratives is the courage of choosing to love anyway, of deciding that the risk of opening your heart is worth it. Love stories are powerful because they strip away the myth that true connection is always easy or always beautiful. Instead, they reveal that real love is built on showing up consistently, even in the moments where we want to retreat. This honesty shapes how we view relationships and teaches us to embrace our own imperfect journeys. The truth within these stories lies in the way they highlight vulnerability. To tell someone you love them, to share your fears, or to admit mistakes requires a courage that not everyone is ready to embrace. And yet, real love cannot exist without this kind of openness. These stories remind us that vulnerability is not about exposing ourselves recklessly, but about being willing to stand fully present with another human being. In those moments, love becomes more than an emotion. It becomes an act of bravery that shapes both people involved. Courage in love is not loud or grand, but often quiet and steady. It is the choice to forgive when pride tempts us to stay angry, the willingness to listen even when it is uncomfortable, and the strength to say, "I'm sorry," when we've been wrong. Real love stories show us that courage lives in the daily actions that sustain connection, not just in the extraordinary gestures. Each of these choices reflects a vulnerability that shapes the heart into something stronger and more compassionate. By listening to these stories, we are reminded that love and courage are inseparable. There is a universal truth within all love stories. They remind us of our shared humanity. Everyone who has loved has felt the fear of rejection, the joy of connection, and the pain of loss. Hearing someone else's real story allows us to see our own experiences reflected back to us, helping us feel less alone. This shared resonance strengthens our understanding of ourselves and others, giving us permission to honor both the beauty and the struggle of love. In doing so, love stories connect us in ways that statistics or theories never could. Authenticity is at the center of why real love stories matter. A polished or perfect tale may entertain us for a while, but it does not transform us. The raw, unfiltered accounts of how people navigate the challenges of love are what truly stay with us. They strip away the illusion that love is flawless and instead honor the messiness of human connection. By embracing these authentic stories, we begin to understand that the most meaningful relationships are not the ones without struggle, but the ones where two people choose each other through the struggle. Listening to real love stories expands our capacity for empathy, both for ourselves and for others. When we hear of someone overcoming betrayal, loss, or fear, it softens our judgments and deepens our understanding. We realize that everyone who has loved has faced battles that required courage and patience. These stories shape us into more compassionate individuals, helping us extend grace not only to others, but also to ourselves when our own relationships do not look perfect. The empathy that grows from hearing these stories becomes a guiding force in how we love and connect. Through these stories, we are reminded that love is not a destination, but a continuous practice of courage and vulnerability. There is no final point where love becomes flawless or effortless. Instead, it is shaped moment by moment through the choices we make. Each real story tells us that the journey itself is what matters most. The act of showing up, even when afraid, is what defines true love. These lessons continue to shape our hearts, allowing us to enter our own relationships with more honesty, humility, and courage. Real love stories begin in places where imperfection lives, where two people meet not as flawless beings, but as vulnerable humans willing to open their hearts. They carry within them the truth that love is not about perfection, but about courageously stepping into the unknown together. In these stories, we see how real connection unfolds not through polished moments, but through raw honesty, laughter, tears, and sometimes conflict. Love, in its truest form, requires us to drop the masks we often wear in the world and reveal our authentic selves. It is this authenticity that gives love its depth and power. When we hear real love stories, we are reminded that love is not simply a feeling, but an ongoing act of bravery. It takes courage to admit when we are afraid, to confess when we are uncertain, and to let another person see the parts of ourselves we try to hide. Love is fragile because people are fragile, and yet the decision to lean into that fragility instead of running from it is what gives relationships strength. Real love stories do not promise perfection, but they promise the beauty of shared humanity. This is why they resonate so deeply with us. Every story carries with it moments of fear and doubt when love is tested and choices must be made. Some choose to walk away, while others choose to stay and build something stronger from the cracks that appear. What makes these stories powerful is the honesty they carry, the acknowledgement that love is not easy, but that it is worth the effort. They show us that trust and commitment are not built in the grand gestures alone, but in the quiet, consistent choices of showing up. In that steadiness, love takes root and grows. Vulnerability is the heartbeat of real love, and these stories make that truth undeniable. To love someone deeply means risking heartbreak, disappointment, or rejection, yet it also opens us to joy, intimacy, and connection that cannot be found elsewhere. Vulnerability is not a weakness, it is a strength that allows us to be seen and known. Love stories remind us that those who dared to be vulnerable created bonds that transformed their lives. It is the courage to say, "Here I am, as I am," that shapes the beauty of love. The lessons within these stories also teach us about resilience. Love is not always smooth or steady. It weathers storms, miscommunications, and hardships. Yet the resilience shown in real love stories reveals that connection can survive even the harshest tests. When two people commit to facing difficulties together rather than apart, love becomes more than a fleeting emotion. It becomes a foundation. These stories inspire us because they prove that even in moments of struggle, love has the capacity to endure and grow stronger. Authenticity is another theme that shines through love stories that are real and unpolished. We cannot build meaningful relationships on a facade because eventually the truth surfaces. Authentic love accepts flaws, embraces imperfections, and chooses presence over performance. The stories that touch us most are not the ones of flawless romance, but of people who showed up with their messy, imperfect selves and loved anyway. That authenticity gives permission for others to live and love more honestly too. It reminds us that we do not need to be perfect to be worthy of love. Through real love stories, we also discover empathy. Listening to how others have navigated heartbreak, loss, joy, and forgiveness softens our perspective. It reminds us that love is not only about two people, but about the human experience of connection. These stories allow us to walk in someone else's shoes and feel what they have felt. They invite us to understand a love beyond our own experiences, opening our hearts to compassion for others. Empathy is the bridge these stories build, connecting strangers through the universal truth of love. Finally, these stories shape our hearts in lasting ways because they call us to be brave in our own relationships. They whisper that love is worth the risk, even when it terrifies us, because connection is what gives life meaning. They challenge us to drop the idea of flawless love and embrace the messy, beautiful reality of human connection. By reflecting on the courage and vulnerability of others, we find the strength to step fully into our own experiences of love. Real love stories become teachers, shaping not only how we love others, but also how we love ourselves. Trust lies at the center of every love story, and without it, connection struggles to survive. Trust is not something that magically appears. It is built slowly, piece by piece, through small actions that prove reliability and care. When we hear about love stories, we often focus on dramatic moments of passion, but the real strength is found in the quiet gestures of trust. It's in being there when someone is tired, showing up when promises are made, and listening without judgment. These simple yet powerful acts form the foundation that allows love to grow and flourish. Real love stories remind us that trust is not created in grand declarations, but in consistency. A partner who shows up time and again in small, meaningful ways demonstrates commitment more deeply than words ever could. Trust requires time, patience, and attention, and once broken, it is not easily rebuilt. That fragility makes it precious and worthy of protection. Love stories often reveal the moments when trust was tested and how the response to those tests either strengthened or weakened the bond. The beauty lies in those who chose honesty even when it was difficult, because honesty preserves connection. Trust also thrives in vulnerability, because to truly trust someone is to give them a part of yourself that they could misuse. It means believing that the other person will treat your fears, dreams, and insecurities with respect. Love stories highlight these moments of risk. When one partner shares something deeply personal and the other chooses compassion instead of judgment. This exchange is the heartbeat of intimacy, where two people become more deeply connected by holding one another's truths. The courage to offer trust makes love stories both relatable and inspiring. In many stories, trust is built not just through words, but through action. Saying, "I love you," has meaning, but showing love through patience, forgiveness, and care proves it. The small, often overlooked moments, a partner remembering what matters to you, standing by you in a storm, or simply listening when you need to be heard, are the moments where trust takes root. These stories remind us that the strength of love is measured not by perfection, but by presence. Trust grows every time we choose to stay connected, even when life feels difficult. At the same time, trust in love stories often faces challenges because no human relationship is free from conflict or disappointment. There are times when mistakes are made and hearts are hurt. Yet the most powerful love stories reveal how forgiveness plays a role in restoring trust. Forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about choosing to move forward with empathy and understanding. These moments of repair show that love is not destroyed by imperfection, but can actually deepen when people are willing to rebuild trust after it has been shaken. Trust is also mutual, requiring both people to give and receive with openness. If only one person bears the weight of trust, while the other holds back, love feels unbalanced. The most moving love stories reveal a rhythm of reciprocity where both individuals carry responsibility for the safety of the relationship. In these balanced partnerships, trust becomes a shared treasure protected by both hearts. This reciprocity is what allows love to sustain itself over time and through trials. It is the shared effort that makes the story strong and memorable. Ultimately, real love stories teach us that trust is not just about believing in another person, but also about believing in ourselves. To trust someone, we must first recognize our own worthiness of being loved and cared for. Without self-trust, fear and insecurity take over, making vulnerability difficult. Love stories inspire us because they remind us that trust is not blind faith, but a conscious choice rooted in courage and self-respect. They show us that when trust is nurtured, love becomes a safe haven, a place where hearts can rest without fear. When we listen to love stories, one theme that often emerges is the courage it takes to be truly vulnerable with another person. Vulnerability means showing the parts of ourselves that we often keep hidden, the parts we fear may not be accepted or valued. In love, vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength because it opens the door, authentic connection. The most powerful love stories do not shy away from imperfection. They reveal the raw and unpolished truths of two people choosing each other anyway. That willingness to be seen completely is what makes love profound. Vulnerability in love stories teaches us that to be loved fully, we must be willing to risk rejection. Sharing our dreams, our insecurities, and our fears requires courage because there is always the chance they will not be met with understanding. Yet the beauty of these stories lies in how vulnerability is often rewarded with deeper intimacy. When one person dares to open up, it creates space for the other to do the same, building trust layer by layer. This mutual unveiling of truth becomes the very fabric of the love story itself. In many narratives, the most touching moments are not when everything is perfect, but when characters reveal their imperfections and are embraced nonetheless. Vulnerability is often portrayed in the simplest acts, admitting mistakes, confessing fears, or asking for support in moments of weakness. These moments show that true love is not about perfection, but about acceptance. When both people in a relationship dare to show up as they are without masks or defenses, they create a love that feels real and lasting. That is the essence of courage and vulnerability. Vulnerability also means admitting when we don't have control, which is often frightening. Love stories remind us that relationships are filled with uncertainty, and no one can guarantee what the future will hold. The courage to step into love anyway, to trust another person with our heart despite the risk, is what makes love so meaningful. These stories inspire us to embrace that uncertainty not as a threat, but as part of the adventure. In the unknown lies the possibility of growth, transformation, and joy. When people share love stories, they often describe pivotal moments when vulnerability changed everything. It might be the first time someone says, "I love you," without knowing if it will be said back, or the moment one partner reveals a painful past. These moments carry great weight because they mark a turning point where trust is either deepened or broken. The stories that resonate most deeply are those where courage is met with compassion, where vulnerability creates connection instead of distance. That transformation is the heartbeat of real love. Courageous vulnerability in love stories also teaches us about empathy. When someone dares to reveal their struggles, the other person has a choice to dismiss or to hold space. Stories that inspire us are those where empathy is chosen, where love grows stronger because both people commit to seeing each other fully. Vulnerability invites empathy, and empathy strengthens love. This cycle becomes the glue that keeps relationships together through hardship and joy alike. It is what turns love into something unshakable. Ultimately, vulnerability in love stories is a mirror for our own lives. These stories challenge us to ask whether we are willing to show up with courage in our own relationships. They remind us that love cannot thrive behind walls of fear or pride. It requires openness. Love stories give us the language and imagery to understand that vulnerability is not a weakness, but the very foundation of intimacy. By watching others risk being seen, we find the courage to do the same in our own lives, shaping deeper and more authentic connections. Trust is often described as the backbone of love, and love stories reveal just how fragile yet powerful it can be. In every relationship, trust is not simply given but built through small, consistent actions that demonstrate reliability and care. Love stories remind us that trust is woven together over time, like a tapestry of moments where promises are kept, truths are told, and vulnerabilities are honored. Without trust, even the strongest emotions begin to weaken, because love needs security to truly flourish. These stories show that real love is anchored in the belief that we can rely on one another. In many love stories, the theme of trust emerges when characters face challenges that test their bond, whether it is long distance, personal struggles, or moments of doubt. These trials illuminate the strength of trust or the devastation of its absence. When partners lean on each other in difficult times, they create a deeper connection that reinforces their love. Conversely, when trust is broken, the story often shifts into one of pain and healing, reminding us how delicate and essential trust really is. These stories mirror the truth that love cannot survive without it. One of the most powerful lessons in these narratives is that trust is built through consistency in actions, not grand gestures. The daily moments of honesty, showing up when needed, and keeping promises often carry more weight than dramatic declarations of love. Love stories portray that trust grows when one person feels safe enough to believe in another's intentions. It is not about perfection, but about effort and reliability. The subtle, steady reinforcement of dependability becomes the soil where love grows deeper and stronger over time. Trust in love stories also highlights the importance of forgiveness. No relationship is without mistakes, and even in the most heartfelt stories, characters sometimes falter. What makes these stories inspiring is how couples choose to confront the breach, communicate honestly, and rebuild their foundation. Forgiveness becomes not a sign of weakness, but of strength, because it allows love to move forward with resilience. Love stories teach us that trust can be mended if both hearts are willing to do the work of understanding and recommitting to each other. Another important theme is the vulnerability required to extend trust in the first place. To trust someone is to hand them a part of yourself that they could choose to honor or harm. Love stories show the courage it takes to give that trust, knowing there are no guarantees. This act of surrender is what makes trust such a powerful expression of love. When that trust is nurtured, it becomes the foundation of intimacy. These stories remind us that real connection requires both risk and faith, and it is through this balance that love thrives. Love stories also illustrate how trust creates space for freedom within relationships. When trust is strong, individuals feel safe to grow, explore, and express themselves without fear of judgment or betrayal. This freedom strengthens the relationship rather than threatening it because both partners know their bond is secure. Trust provides room for individuality while still protecting the unity of love. These stories inspire us to see that trust does not limit us, but instead empowers us to be our fullest selves within the embrace of love. Finally, the most enduring love stories show that trust transforms relationships into lifelong partnerships. When two people commit to honesty, loyalty, and vulnerability, they create a bond that weathers storms and celebrates triumphs. Trust gives love the strength to endure through time, making it more than just fleeting passion. These stories resonate with us because they capture the beauty of trust in action, showing us that love grounded in trust is not only possible, but profoundly powerful. In this way, trust becomes not just a theme, but the very heartbeat of love itself. Would you like me to continue and expand Keynote 5 next in the same style? Love stories often reveal that communication is the bridge through which trust is built and sustained. In relationships, words are more than mere exchanges. They carry meaning, reassurance, and the power to create safety. When partners share openly, they foster a connection that deepens trust and eliminates doubt. Love stories remind us that silence can breed misunderstanding, while honest dialogue brings clarity and healing. Each moment of communication becomes a chance to strengthen the invisible bond of trust. The characters in love stories often face situations where truth must be spoken even when it is difficult. These moments highlight that trust thrives when people dare to be honest rather than protect themselves with lies or omissions. Love stories show us that the courage to tell the truth creates space for authenticity in relationships. It may feel risky, but it builds an unshakable foundation that withstands challenges. Through these examples, we learn that trust is nurtured when honesty outweighs fear. At the heart of many love stories lies the vulnerability of sharing one's inner world. Trust grows when individuals feel safe enough to reveal their fears, dreams, and insecurities without judgment. Characters who open up in such ways teach us that intimacy is not born from perfection, but from authenticity. When these truths are received with compassion, the relationship becomes a sanctuary. Love stories remind us that this act of mutual exposure weaves trust into the very fabric of love. Another recurring theme in love stories is the consistency of actions aligning with words. Promises that are honored and commitments that are kept speak louder than declarations of love. Characters who embody dependability illustrate how trust is strengthened through reliability. The audience witnesses that trust falters when actions contradict words, creating cracks in the bond. These lessons demonstrate that love is only sustainable when honesty is mirrored by consistent follow-through. Love stories also explore the pain of broken trust and the difficult road to healing. When betrayal occurs, the story often shifts into one of forgiveness and rebuilding. Characters who confront the breach and strive to repair what was lost remind us that trust, though fragile, is not beyond restoration. The journey of reconciliation requires patience, humility, and a willingness to be transparent again. Through these arcs, we learn that love's resilience can shine brightest after its darkest trials. Forgiveness in these narratives is not portrayed as forgetting, but as choosing to rebuild with intention. The act of forgiveness allows trust to slowly return, though it may never be exactly as it once was. Love stories show that forgiveness is a gift that offers both partners the chance to grow together rather than remain stuck in pain. This process underscores the idea that trust is both a choice and a practice, continuously nurtured by empathy and compassion. Trust repaired through forgiveness often becomes stronger because it has endured hardship. Finally, the most powerful love stories illustrate that trust is not a one-time decision, but a continuous act. It is built in small choices every day, in words spoken with care, in promises upheld, and in openness shared without fear. These stories teach us that trust is like a flame that must be tended, requiring effort, attention, and love to keep burning. When trust is honored over time, it transforms relationships into havens of safety and joy. Love stories remind us that the beauty of trust lies in its ability to deepen with each chapter of life. In love stories, one of the most profound lessons we discover is that trust and love cannot exist without vulnerability. Vulnerability is often portrayed as a risk, a leap into the unknown, but it is the very place where trust is either nurtured or broken. Characters who dare to open their hearts, even when they are unsure of the outcome, reveal that real intimacy requires courage. Their willingness to expose their authentic selves creates space for honesty to grow. Love stories remind us that without this openness, trust remains shallow. When a character takes the step of being vulnerable, the response from their partner determines the strength of trust between them. If vulnerability is met with compassion and acceptance, it becomes a seed that blossoms into deeper love. When it is dismissed or ridiculed, it causes wounds that erode trust. Stories teach us that trust is built not only by the one who reveals, but also by the one who listens and responds. The power lies in how two people handle each other's fragile truths. Love then becomes an exchange of tender courage. Many love stories highlight moments where vulnerability is expressed in silence, gestures, or simple acts of presence. A character may not always have the right words, but their willingness to show up authentically demonstrates their trustworthiness. These actions remind us that vulnerability is not always grand or dramatic. Often it's found in the small, consistent ways someone chooses to be real. These moments make relationships feel alive and grounded. Through them, we see that trust is earned through genuine connection rather than performance. Another dimension revealed in love stories is that vulnerability often demands letting go of control. Trust cannot flourish when one partner holds tightly to power or perfection, refusing to let their true self be seen. Characters who learn to release the need for certainty discover that love grows stronger when they surrender. This surrender is not weakness, but strength, a recognition that intimacy thrives only when both hearts are willing to risk being broken. Love stories reveal that trust requires us to let go in order to hold on more fully. At times, vulnerability in love stories brings conflict or tension, yet these moments are also where trust deepens most. When partners reveal fears, past mistakes, or insecurities, it often triggers difficult conversations. Yet it is in navigating these struggles together that love becomes resilient. Trust emerges stronger because it has been tested in fire rather than sheltered from challenge. Such stories remind us that vulnerability is not about avoiding pain, but about facing it honestly, side by side. Forgiveness is another powerful outcome of vulnerability in love stories. When one partner admits wrongdoing or expresses regret, they place themselves in a position of humility. This act opens the door for the other to extend grace, and through this exchange, trust can be rebuilt. Vulnerability shows us that love is not about perfection, but about having the courage to repair what is broken. These stories illustrate that forgiveness does not erase pain, but allows trust to grow again, stronger and wiser than before. Finally, love stories reveal that vulnerability is not a single act, but an ongoing choice. Each day brings opportunities to open up, to share truthfully, and to meet the other with kindness. Trust is sustained by this rhythm of mutual exposure and acceptance, where both partners continually lean into honesty. Vulnerability becomes a practice, not a performance, shaping love into something enduring. These stories remind us that love and trust thrive not in the absence of risk, but in the brave choice to keep showing up as our truest selves. In many love stories, the beauty lies not in perfection, but in the willingness of two people to continually show up for each other with honesty. Trust is not built once and for all. It is nurtured through repeated choices to be open, even when it feels uncomfortable. Vulnerability plays a central role here because it asks both people to take risks without guarantees. Every moment of honesty is an invitation to either deepen or damage trust. These stories remind us that love is never static, it is alive, fragile, and dependent on courage. Trust in love stories often grows when characters dare to reveal the parts of themselves they fear are unlovable. By sharing insecurities, flaws, or painful histories, they demonstrate the deepest form of courage. When their partners meet those confessions with compassion, the bond strengthens, showing that love flourishes when judgment is replaced with acceptance. Vulnerability then becomes the bridge that connects two hearts. Through this exchange, trust takes root, allowing both people to feel safe in being fully themselves. These stories also highlight that trust requires consistency over time. Vulnerability is not just about dramatic revelations, but also about the daily choice to be real. When one partner consistently honors the other's openness with kindness, it creates a steady foundation where trust can expand. Small acts, listening without interruption, keeping promises, offering presence, carry as much weight as grand declarations. Love stories teach us that trust is not built in a single moment, but in countless small ones where vulnerability is honored. Another powerful lesson is that vulnerability requires patience, both with oneself and with others. Characters often struggle with the fear of rejection, hesitating before they reveal their truth. But once they take that step, they realize that love cannot exist without risk. This unfolding teaches us that trust is not rushed. It grows at the pace of vulnerability. Each act of courage is a seed planted, and with time, these seeds blossom into a deep-rooted connection. Patience and gentleness are vital for trust to thrive. Conflict in love stories often becomes the stage where vulnerability and trust are tested most strongly. Arguments, misunderstandings, and disappointments reveal whether two people can hold space for each other's pain. Vulnerability in these moments is risky as it exposes raw emotions and fears. Yet, when both partners choose to remain open instead of shutting down, trust grows deeper. These stories show us that trust is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to face it together with honesty and grace. Forgiveness emerges as one of the greatest gifts vulnerability can bring to love stories. When a character admits their mistakes, they humble themselves, showing their humanity. This act of openness paves the way for reconciliation as it invites the other to respond with compassion. Trust is often rebuilt in these moments, proving that love does not require perfection, but the willingness to repair what has been broken. Vulnerability teaches us that forgiveness strengthens relationships rather than weakening them because it reaffirms mutual commitment. Ultimately, love stories reveal that vulnerability is a lifelong practice rather than a one-time act. Trust thrives in an ongoing cycle of openness, honesty, and acceptance where both people continually choose to show up authentically. Each moment of truth telling, each act of listening, and each expression of care becomes a building block of a stronger bond. Love becomes more than just affection. It becomes a safe place where hearts are known and cherished. These stories remind us that trust and love are inseparable, both born from the courage to be real.